Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
The month of June continues to move forward, which means the Crimson Tide are set to host another group of official visitors on this weekend, with multiple five-stars set to be in Tuscaloosa. I will talk about all of those guys on this episode of The Process. As always, I am Justin Smith, the Director of Recruiting and Managing Editor here at Touchdown, Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube channel. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well as subscribers. Hit the notification bell, be notified when we drop content on our YouTube channel. Like I said earlier, Crimson Tide are set to host multiple five-star prospects on campus on this weekend. Multiple of those guys will be five-star recruits, starting with Jordan Edmonds, who's currently verbally committed to the Crimson Tide. He's a product of Sprayberry High School in the Marietta, Georgia area, verbally committed to Alabama. When you take a look at a guy like Edmonds, he's that prototypical cornerback prospect that a lot of top schools are going to want to go after in terms of this changing landscape of college football. With just how athletic wide receivers are, you're going to want a long and athletic 6'3", 180-pound type of cornerback like Jordan Edmonds on your roster, which is why the Crimson Tide prioritize him in his 2026 recruiting class. They got him back on campus earlier in the spring for an unofficial visit on A-Day. He said the visit was great, loved being around the players and the staff. He said it felt like home. In my opinion, them getting him back on campus for A-Day after he verbally committed previous to that visit, I basically think the Crimson Tide cemented themselves in this recruitment at that particular point in time. I think that makes his official visit kind of twofold. I think he's going to be a guy who's getting back to Tuscaloosa, continuing to learn, and continuing to get comfortable with Tuscaloosa, of course. But I also think he's going to be coming to Tuscaloosa with his recruiting hat on. I think he's going to want to try to help the Crimson Tide land some of the top prospects in the 2026 class who are going to be, some of them are going to be in Tuscaloosa on this weekend. So I think Edmonds will have his recruiting hat on for the Crimson Tide, who are trying to have a big recruiting weekend after having a pretty successful one on last weekend. Be sure to check out our official visit recap on our YouTube channel and some official visit interviews over at touchdownalabama.com as well, along with Xavier Edwards. He will be on the campus of University of Alabama as well, alongside Jordan Edmonds. He's a five-star defensive back out of St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, Maryland. One of the most physical defensive backs in the 2026 recruiting class. This guy brings a lot of force when he makes tackles. He plays physical. He's a bigger safety. In my mind, in my opinion, I think he's a perfect fit for the Crimson Tide's Husky position on the defensive back end within that secondary, because you need that position, which Devontae Smith occupied a lot during the 2024 football season. You need that defensive back to be physical. You need him to be able to possibly take on blocks close to the line of scrimmage and get to the football. That is the type of player that Xavier Edwards is, and that's the type of plays that he made last year for St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, Maryland. But he is a guy who's going to be able to be used as a safety in the secondary, be versatile as a defensive back in Kane Womack's defense if he was to choose the Crimson Tide. Alabama currently is involved in his recruitment, of course, along with programs like Auburn, Florida, Oregon, Texas A&M. We'll see what this official visit will do for the Crimson Tide, as they will get the opportunity to host them, and it looks as if they are trending in a good direction with them before this official visit. So Xavier Edwards is a guy, there's a lot to like about him in so many different ways. But keeping our direction going with five-star prospects, and next guy I want to talk about is five-star running back Derek Cooper. I don't think this is a guy we've talked about a lot in recent episodes of the process, but he's not a guy who's just unfamiliar to the process, because we've been tracking him for quite a couple of months now. I remember the first time I got an opportunity to basically get a temperature check where the Crimson Tide stood in his recruitment was at the Under Armour All-America game in January, because he was one of the few 2026 prospects who had an opportunity to participate in the Under Armour All-America game as a junior, and he was a guy who looked really good in that game, because he is a 6'1", 200-pound explosive running back who can run a sub-11 100-meter dash, flash ability, be not only dynamic in the run game but also a pass game in the pass game, in terms of him being one of the most explosive prospects out of Florida when it comes to this 2026 recruiting class. I think the Crimson Tide will have an opportunity, in my opinion, just to become a more serious contender for the five-star running back, because he is still still considering programs like Auburn, Miami, Penn State, Ohio State, and others. And I think running back is probably the position that a lot of these positions, because I've talked about them in the past, a lot of these guys want to play early, but I feel like running backs a lot of time probably want to play a little bit earlier than other spots, because a lot of times you're going to go 2, possibly 3 deep. So there's more opportunity for a running back to play early. So I'm not saying that Cooper is considering that, but that is something that you wouldn't be surprised if a running back was considering playing early when he's discussing going to all of these different schools. But when I got that temperature check from Cooper, because he unofficially visited the Crimson Tide during the 2024 football season, and Alabama basically showed him on that visit that, hey, we really want you. We want to prioritize you here in this 2026 recruiting class. He said the moment that he walked into Kalen DeBoer's office, his film was on the boards, basically saying like, yo, we're looking at your film. We love your film. He said their contact was pretty consistent at that point. Like every day he was talking to the coaching staff at Alabama. He said that he really felt like Alabama wanted him in January. So he's getting on campus for this official visit. Of course, Alabama's running back coach Robert Gillespie is involved. He did say during that January conversation that he knew 100% that the Crimson Tide were going to get an official visit from him. So he's keeping true to that promise. So we'll see where Alabama stands with Cooper after this visit. I think this is a visit. It's one of those visits where I think Alabama can really do some damage and say like, and make Cooper feel like, yo, this is the right place for me. But we'll see how that plays out with some other programs still involved in this recruitment as well. Xavier Griffin, 5-star linebacker out of Gainesville High School in Gainesville, Georgia, one of the most versatile linebackers in the country. It's hard to find a guy who can do everything this kid can do. In terms of him being able to bend the edge, drop back in coverage, add experience as an inside linebacker, probably going to compare him to a guy like Jahad Campbell, just based on their similar. Although I feel like Campbell was definitely more filled out at this particular point in time in his career than Xavier Griffin appears to be. But in terms of their skill set, they have very similar skill sets. But I do think Campbell was a little bit more filled out at this particular point in his development in comparison to Xavier Griffin. But the Crimson Tide will get him on campus for his official visit. Alabama has been trending with him since he decommitted from USC. Actually, they really never went away in his recruitment because they continued to recruit him because they knew he was a guy who can fit into their defense at that wolf position almost perfectly, but they also knew he was an Alabama native. He has a lot of ties to Alabama football with him growing up in the Huntsville, Alabama area. A lot of his family members being Alabama fans. So this is a guy you wouldn't want to give up on. So even if he still was verbally committed to USC at this particular point in time, I just still see the Crimson Tide just chipping away with their outside linebacker coach Christian Robinson leading the way for Xavier Griffin. Unlike a guy like Cooper, who I feel like the Crimson Tide can make a significant move for, I think we can talk about Griffin. I think this is a chance for the Crimson Tide to possibly close the door on anybody in terms of getting Xavier Griffin. I think they can put the nail in the coffin for a guy like him, just based on the direction they've been trending with him. Just the tenacity, the tenaciousness that a guy like Christian Robinson has shown when going after Xavier Griffin has been really impressive. So I think the Crimson Tide remain in a great position with Griffin ahead of this official visit. The next guy I want to talk about is a 5-star prospect as well. And similar to Cooper, I think the Crimson Tide will have an opportunity to make a jump in this recruitment or possibly continue to move forward in this recruitment. And I'm talking about 5-star tight end Kaden Prothrow. And also similar to Cooper, I feel like we haven't talked about Prothrow in a long time here, but he's a guy who we've been looking at and covering. And similar to Cooper, he was one of those few juniors who participated in the Under Armour All-America game during the month of January, and he said he was feeling really good about the Crimson Tide at that particular point in time. And going back to that conversation, that conversation came after he actually visited Alabama 2 times as a junior during the 2024 football season. And basically what Alabama's coaching staff was telling him, like, yo, we don't have a guy like you at the tight end position. And right now they are correct. Alabama doesn't have a 6'7" tight end who can move quite like Kaden Prothrow. Of course, they have a great long wide receiver in Derek Meadows, but he's not really a tight end. Prothrow is a guy who is projected to be a tight end at the next level. So Alabama does not have a tight end that looks like Kaden Prothrow at the moment. So that's kind of like the thing that they've been telling him in terms of recruiting him in this 2026 recruiting class. He currently has Alabama in his top 5, coming off an official visit to Georgia, where it looks as if the Bulldogs had a successful official visit with them. So I think this is a visit where the Crimson Tide can continue to make a good impression on Prothrow. I feel like they've done a good job so far, just continuing to recruit him. The relationship that he's building with Alabama's tight end coach Brian Ellis, with Coach DeBoer, they just constantly telling him like, "Yo, we really want you in Tuscaloosa." So I think this is a visit where I more so put into the direction of, hey, we're gonna see where Alabama stands with Prothrow after this visit and see where he's considering Alabama, after saying Georgia has set the bar high for him after that first official visit. The quarterback who will be in Tuscaloosa on this weekend is Matt Ponatowski. We talked about him on several episodes of the process now. Talented quarterback, makes all of the throws on film. He's a two-sport athlete, wants to play baseball and football at the next level. Like I said, just keeping it quick with Ponatowski here. I think it all comes down to, of course, his official visit can be good, but I think with these quarterbacks, I think it is a little bit deeper than just a great official visit. I think Alabama's coaching staff has to first show these guys that, hey, this is our plan for you. And these guys have to look at it and be like, yo, I'm coming to Alabama. Keelan Russell, 5-star quarterback. If I want to play a little bit earlier in my career, I know I'm going to have to beat out that guy, possibly another quarterback in front of him. And that is just the situation that I'm going to be faced with if I come to Alabama. I think that is the challenge that whoever signs with the Crimson Tide here in this 2026 recruiting class, I think that is what they have to take upon themselves and say, like, okay, this is the situation that I am walking into. So we'll see what Matt Ponatowski says after taking an official visit with Alabama on this weekend. Another Alabama commit who will be in Tuscaloosa is Kamaron Johnson, who I've had an opportunity to watch during the spring and watch him actually at the Under Armour camp in Nashville a couple of months ago as well. And he was really impressive at that camp, and really, really impressive when I saw him play in Must Show spring game against Austin High School, just showing his versatility along the defensive front because he rushed from the edge, made plays, getting after the quarterback, but he also saw some opportunities to not only rush from the edge, but dive deeper into the interior of Muscle Shoals defensive line and still make plays as well. I think he's a guy who has the potential to play just different spots along the defensive front at the next level. The Crimson Tide like him at that bandit position. Alabama's defensive line coach Freddie Roach actually in attendance at that spring game as well. Had an opportunity to talk with Johnson before this visit. He said he's just looking forward to continue to build a relationship with Alabama's coaches and players, but he's also coming to put his recruiting hat on. He has his eyes on Xavier Griffin, who's a product, like I said, of Huntsville, Alabama. Kamaron Johnson is a product of Muscle Shoals. So both of those guys are products of North Alabama. So he's going to be recruiting him as well. Another guy who has Alabama ties who will be on campus on this weekend is a guy who the Crimson Tide have a commitment from as well. And I'm talking about 4-star edge Jamari Matthews. Out of Gainesville High School in Gainesville, Georgia, currently attends Gainesville High School, but he's a product of Huntsville, Alabama as well. He's currently teaming up with Xavier Griffin now, but both are Huntsville, Alabama natives. And unlike Griffin, at least at this particular point in time, Matthews is very really committed to the Tide. So, but like Johnson, when it comes to Matthews, he will be most likely continuing to recruit Griffin to Tuscaloosa. So the Crimson Tide have an opportunity to put the full court press on a guy like Xavier Griffin on this weekend with Matthews being on campus. We saw Matthews at a Nashville Under Armour camp. He took on defensive lineman MVP award, told us why he's staying very really committed to Alabama. So I think this is a great visit for him to, just similar to Johnson, continue to build relationship, continue to build rapport with Alabama's coaching staff, just the different people around the facility along with his family. But it is an opportunity for him to put on that recruiting hat as well. So we'll see where Xavier Griffin is standing here in his 2026 recruiting class after this official visit, with Matthews and Johnson going after him on this weekend. The Crimson Tide will also host Kamari Brooks, a 2026 4-star edge, another Georgia guy who's coming off an official visit to Georgia, similar to Prothrow. When you take a look at Brooks, he's a linebacker prospect who makes plays rushing from the edge. You see him playing off the ball, inside linebacker, dropping back in coverage, making plays as well, because that's just what you have to do if you want to be recruited as a linebacker in today's age of college football. Is this trending towards a Georgia and Alabama battle? Definitely looks like it could be. And this is something that we just see in every recruiting cycle. Georgia and Alabama going one-on-one against one another on the recruiting cycle. And Kamari Brooks, it looks to be one of those guys who both of those programs are going to be battling it out for. So Alabama has a chance to, in my opinion, take a huge step forward and show Georgia up right after his official visit to Georgia. Brooks is headed to Tuscaloosa, so he's going to have a pretty quick comparison opportunity to say, hey, this is what Alabama showed me, this is what Georgia showed me, and this is currently where I am standing at. The Crimson Tide will also host a wide receiver, 6'4", Florida wide receiver, Brian Williams, a guy who can create separation with his route running ability. A lot of times I say different skill sets and describe different type of things that wide receivers like to do. But when I turn on Brian Williams' film, I see him be able to do a couple of different things. You see him work his release. You see him be able to create separation out of his release, because at the line of scrimmage, you saw him basically do a great release, fool the cornerback, get him off balance. But you also see him create separation with his route running ability, which is something you don't always see, even with guys who are considered high-end ranking wide receiver recruits. This guy's a great route runner, and if you are a great route runner, that easily transitions over to the next level. And I think you just can get on the field a little bit earlier if you can create separation at the top of your route, similar to what Brian Williams was just able to do. The Crimson Tide actually recently offered Williams, he's actually already on the campus of the University of Alabama, taking his official visit starting a little bit earlier than most. But when you take a look at the Crimson Tide recruiting the wide receiver position, they have multiple targets on their boards, really talented guys. I think a guy like Brian Williams is a guy you would love to have in Tuscaloosa, but Alabama offered him in April, which means the relationship probably isn't as good as some of the other prospects who are already on this list who we talked about on to date. But I think Alabama, with him getting on campus early, I think they have an opportunity to show him what all they have to offer. I'm pretty sure similar to last weekend when the Crimson Tide hosted Ethan Feaster. I'm pretty sure Ryan Williams is going to be involved in terms of trying to get a guy like Brian to Tuscaloosa, because Ryan constantly pumps up his teammates all the time, on a very consistent basis in terms of just talking about them in interviews. So he wants to play alongside the best. A 4-star offensive lineman who's really impressive, who will be in Tuscaloosa, is Sam Utu. He's a guy who I've talked about on previous episodes of the process, but taking a look at his film, I think the thing that probably stands out to me the most is his balance in his footwork. Just look at his feet. When you just take a look at his film, look how nimble he looks, look how under control he looks, and look how balanced he looks for a guy his size. I think that is the thing that really stands out when I take a look at Sam Utu's film. But he's a guy who the Crimson Tide really impressed during the spring. Gave me an all-time quote for his after that unofficial visit, saying the culture has his winning edge, but they illustrate the brotherhood, and that's what matters most. Can't win a game single-handedly, but together as a unit, and they demonstrate that. Well, nothing more to see. Everything was covered, and they don't BS you. They care and pour what it is that they want in you and the expectations. So the Crimson Tide stood out really, really good and stood out a lot during Utu's unofficial visit during the spring. And I think this official visit gives Alabama an opportunity to cement themselves for Utu. I think they are the favorite right now. I think they have an opportunity to just strengthen their position in his recruitment. But that is what I want to talk about on this episode of The Process, breaking down the Crimson Tide's upcoming official visit weekend. A lot of 5 stars will be in Tuscaloosa. A lot of impressive recruits Alabama fans should be very, very excited about. But that will do it for this episode of The Process. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. Subscribe to the notification bell, be notified when I drop content on our YouTube channel. As always, I am Justin Smith, the Director of Recruiting and Managing Editor here at Touchdown Alabama. Process.